Level 1. Soviet Kid. You're 11. Moscow, 1981. Your family has one room in a kommunalka on Varshavskoye Shosa. 4 families share the apartment. The hallway smells like boiled cabbage and someone else's cigarettes. Your father is an engineer at a defense plant. He makes 180 rubles a month. Your mother teaches mathematics at a secondary school. Together, they have enough for food, the metro, and 1 pair of decent shoes per year. The shoes are planned 3 months in advance. You are not poor. Poor is something else, something they show in documentaries about Africa before the evening news. You are Soviet, which means you have the same as everyone else, which means you have enough, which means you want more, and there is no official mechanism for that wanting. You are good at mathematics, better than good. Your teacher is a man named Volkov, 50, dry, 26 years in the classroom. And he tells your mother, the boy thinks in structures. He doesn't calculate. He sees the answer and then builds the path backward. She brings this home like a gift. Your father nods and says good and doesn't know what to do with it. You win the district Olympiad at 13, regional at 14. At 15, you're selected for the mathematics boarding school at MGU. You pack a satchel and take the metro across the city and don't look back at the kommunalka. Looking back is not useful. You already know at 15 that useful is the correct lens for everything. Level 2. University Student. You're 18. Moscow, 1988. MGU, Mathematics Faculty. Gorbachev has been General Secretary for 3 years. Glasnost is in every conversation. Perestroika is in every newspaper. The system is loosening in ways nobody can measure but everyone can feel, like pressure changing before weather arrives. You study mathematics. You are exceptional at it. You are also watching something that interests you more: the gaps. The Soviet economy runs on gaps between official price and actual value, between what exists and what is recorded as existing, between what is permitted and what is possible if you know the right people and the right sequence of steps. These gaps have always existed. What's changing is that certain gaps are widening. Widening gaps are opportunity. A classmate named Berezin, compact, fast-talking from Sverdlovsk, starts buying jeans from foreigners at the Rosia Hotel and selling them to students at 3 times the price. This is technically illegal. Nobody stops him. He makes 400 rubles in a month. He shows you the money like a proof. You don't sell jeans. You watch Berezin and understand the structure. Access to something scarce. Knowledge of where demand exists. The willingness to operate in the gap between them. The specific commodity doesn't matter. The structure matters. You file the structure away. You graduate with honors in 1991. The Soviet Union has 4 months left to live. You don't know that yet, but you feel the pressure changing. Level 3. The chaos years. You're 22. Moscow, 1992. The Soviet Union is gone. The rules are gone with it. What replaced them is not capitalism, not yet. What replaced them is a void. 70 years of state control evaporated in 18 months, and what's underneath is not a market. It's a scramble. Prices are liberalized overnight. Inflation runs at 2,500% annually. The ruble loses meaning in real time. What something costs on Monday is not what it costs on Thursday. Most people are terrified. You are paying very close attention. You get a job at a commodities trading company, one of hundreds that materialized in 1991, run by people who understood one thing. There are enormous price differentials between what goods cost at the factory gate and what they cost in the West. Aluminum produced in Siberia for Soviet-era prices can be sold in London for market prices. The difference is, at this moment in history, almost incomprehensible. Your job is to find the differentials and document them. You are very good at this. You are also, within 6 months, doing something beyond your job description. You're building relationships with the factory directors who control the output. They are men in their 50s and 60s who ran Soviet enterprises for decades and now find themselves owning nothing, managing assets that are theoretically being privatized into a market they don't understand. You understand the market. They have the assets. The gap between those two things is where you live. A director named Grachev runs an aluminum smelter east of the Urals. He doesn't understand voucher privatization. The government has given every Russian citizen vouchers they can use to acquire shares in formerly state enterprises. Grachev doesn't understand what the vouchers are worth or how to acquire enough of them to control his own plant. You explain it to him. Then you offer to help. He says, "How does this help you?" You say, "I'd like a small consulting fee, and I'd like first right of refusal on any trading relationships you need to establish." He looks at you for a long time. You are 22 years old. He says, "Fine, level 4. First, real money. You're 26. Moscow, 1996. You own 34% of a trading company, a minority stake in 2 regional banks, and the exclusive export agreement for 3 metal producers totaling annual output worth $180 million at Jundan metal exchange prices." None of this appeared in a straight line. It appeared through a sequence of transactions that each looked small at the time. A trading fee here, an equity stake accepted instead of cash there. A banking relationship that became a shareholding through a mechanism that was legal in 1994 and would not be clearly legal by 1998 and doesn't fully make sense even now if you trace it carefully. You don't trace it carefully, you move forward. Your partner, Berezin, the jeans trader from university who pivoted to finance with the same instinct he applied to denim, handles the banking side. You handle the commodities. You don't have a formal agreement. You have a relationship that goes back 8 years, which in this environment is the only contract that holds. A man named Simonov enters your life. He is 48, connected, and represents, though this is never stated directly, certain interests that sit between the government and the business world in a way that the early Yeltsin years made possible. He wants to be a shareholder in your trading company. He is offering something in exchange that he doesn't name, but that you understand. Access to the rooms where certain decisions get made. You negotiate. You give him 12%. He gives you the rooms. The rooms are where you understand for the first time how this actually works. The privatization of Russian industry is not a market process. It is a political process that uses market language. The assets go to the people who are in the right rooms at the right time with the right relationships. You are now in the rooms. You intend to stay. Your first apartment that isn't a communalka, a 4-room flat on Kutuzovsky Prospect. You buy it for cash. Your mother comes to see it and stands in the living room for a long time without saying anything. She says, "Be careful." You say, "I am always careful." Level 5, the loans for shares era. You're 28, Moscow, 1996. Before we go any further, drop a comment below. What career do you want to see next? Hit like, subscribe. We post every single day. The Yeltsin government needs money. The election is in 6 months. The communist candidate is polling ahead. A group of bankers. You are adjacent to this group, not yet at its center. Propose a scheme. The banks will lend money to the government, secured against shares in the largest state enterprises. Oil companies, metals producers, telecommunications. If the government defaults on the loans, and it will, because the loans are designed to be defaulted upon, the banks will take the shares. This is the mechanism by which Russia's largest industrial assets transfer from the state to a group of approximately 20 people in the span of 18 months. You are not one of the 20. You are close enough to benefit from knowing what's coming. You acquire a position in a nickel producer through a secondary transaction, buying shares from an intermediary who acquired them in the loans for shares process. The price is a fraction of the underlying asset value. You know it's a fraction because you did the calculation 3 times before you signed. Simonov makes one phone call on your behalf. You don't know who he called. You don't ask. By the end of 1996, you are on paper worth $340 million. The number doesn't feel real because it isn't. It's a valuation of assets in a market that doesn't function normally, in a country that is doing something unprecedented, using numbers that could revise in any direction. You know this. You spend $4 million on an apartment in London, not to live in, to have. The West is where the money is real. Level 6, the Oligarch. You're 32, Moscow, 2000. Putin becomes president in March. You attend a meeting in February, before the election, with 12 other men who together control a significant fraction of the Russian economy. The message delivered in that room is clear without being stated. The rules are changing. The arrangement of the 1990s, businesses using political connections to acquire assets, political figures using business relationships for financing, is being reorganized. The new arrangement will have a center. The center will not be you. You make a calculation. Several of the men in that room do not make this calculation correctly. They believe what worked in the 1990s will continue to work. They believe their money is their protection. They believe the relationships they built give them standing to negotiate. Berezin makes this calculation incorrectly. He goes into opposition. He funds media outlets that criticize the Kremlin. He is arrested in 2003, tried on charges that are legally constructed but not entirely fabricated. There are real violations in everything everyone did in the 1990s. The question is always whether they're being prosecuted and sentenced to 9 years. He serves 8. He is then expelled and dies in London under circumstances that a British inquest calls an open verdict. You make the calculation correctly, or you think you do. You give up the media assets. You give up the political involvement. You donate generously to foundations connected to the presidential administration. You are not Berezin. For 7 years, this works. Your net worth is $4.2 billion. You have 3 homes, Moscow, the Côte d'Azur, and the London apartment that has become a house in Belgravia. You have a 78-meter yacht built in Germany. You have a former wife and 2 children who live in Switzerland and whom you see 6 weeks a year. You tell yourself this is the price of the work. This is true and also not the whole truth. Level 7. The Consolidation. You're 38. Moscow, 2006. The price of oil is $70 a barrel and rising. Russia is generating wealth at a rate that makes the chaos of the 1990s look like the rehearsal it was. You have reorganized your holdings. The trading company is a holding structure registered in Cyprus, which holds stakes in operating companies registered in Russia, which are managed by boards that include enough officially connected figures that the arrangement is stable. This is not unique to you. This is how it works. A new asset opportunity, a port facility on the Black Sea, privatized in the 1990s, currently undervalued, strategically significant to logistics chains that you already sit across. You want it. The process of acquiring it involves 4 steps that each look legitimate and together constitute something that could be described as a forced sale. The current owner, a regional businessman named Petrov, 60, who built the facility in the 1990s, is visited by regulatory inspectors twice in 6 weeks. His bank receives a call from an official he cannot identify. His primary customer relationship ends abruptly. He sells. The price is 40% of what you will value the asset at in your next financial statement. You don't order any of this. You don't speak to any of the people who do it. A man in your orbit, a fixer named Zaitsev who has been in your orbit for 8 years and whose specific function you have never formally defined, handles the sequencing. You sign the acquisition documents. You don't think about Petrov. This is the version of yourself you've constructed, the one who doesn't think about Petrov. It works until it doesn't. Level 8. The warning signs. You're 44. London/Moscow, 2012. Something shifts, not dramatically, gradually, the way the tide goes out before a wave. The political environment has been tightening since 2008, but you've managed it. You've stayed out of opposition politics. You've given where giving was required. You've maintained the relationships that needed to be maintained. But the rules keep changing underneath you, and the goalposts keep moving, and what was sufficient last year is not sufficient this year, and what is sufficient this year will not be sufficient next year. 3 men in your circle, men you've known for 20 years, men whose names appear on the same boards and in the same social photographs, are having problems. Not criminal problems yet, regulatory problems, tax problems, problems with licenses and permits, and the 100 small permissions that a Russian business requires to function. The problems are not random. You bring your family to London permanently. Your daughter is 14. Your son is 11. They go to school in Kensington. Your former wife is already here, has been for 4 years, quietly by mutual agreement. You see her at the children's events and it is civil. You hire a crisis management firm, British. They have experience with Russian clients, with the specific situation of having enormous wealth in a country where the rule of law is a negotiation and needing to position that wealth in a place where it is more secure. They are very good at this. They charge accordingly. Your net worth at this point is $6.8 billion, a number that means you can solve almost any problem that money can solve. You are beginning to understand more clearly which problems money cannot solve. Level 9, February 2022. You're 52. London. The tanks cross the border on a Thursday. You know before the news does. Not the specific date, but the trajectory, which has been visible to anyone paying attention. You have been paying attention. In January, you moved $400 million through a series of transfers that your lawyers described as routine restructuring. The timing is not coincidental. The sanctions come fast, faster than anyone predicted. Asset freezes, travel bans, the superyacht, which is in a marina in Barcelona, impounded by Spanish authorities on a Saturday morning while you are watching the news in your Belgravia house and your phone is ringing from 6 numbers simultaneously. The yacht takes 3 years and $40 million in legal fees, and you get it back in a settlement that is itself under appeal. But the yacht is the smallest thing. Your company's accounts in European banks are frozen. Your children's school calls, politely, formally, to ask about the status of the fees. Your daughter is 17. Your son is 14. They did not choose this. You did not choose this exactly, but you made the choices that led to this, which is different and also the same. A British Member of Parliament reads your name into the House of Commons record. You are described as a key enabler of a criminal regime. Some of what he says is accurate. Some is not. None of it is something you can effectively contest because contesting it requires a platform you no longer have. Simonov, who is 74 now, who introduced you to the rooms 30 years ago, dies in Moscow. The cause of death is listed as heart failure, He was under investigation by 3 European governments. You send flowers to the family. You don't attend the funeral. You haven't been to Moscow in 14 months. You are worth, on paper, $5.1 billion. In practice, you cannot access $3.8 billion of it. The gap between those two numbers is where you now live. Level 10, Exile, you're 54, London, 2024. The house in Belgravia is yours. The British sanctions regime has a carve-out for primary residence. Your lawyers, 4 firms, 3 jurisdictions, have been over this 17 times. You stay. It's a Tuesday. Your son is at university in Edinburgh. Permitted, because the sanctions don't apply to him, because he was 14 when the invasion happened, and the law does not pursue the children. At least not yet. Your daughter is in New York working for a foundation that does environmental work. She uses her mother's surname. You understand why. You think about Volkov, the mathematics teacher, who told your mother the boy thinks in structures. You think about whether the structure you spent 30 years building was the right structure. Not morally. You've had that conversation with yourself at length, and it produces answers that satisfy you less than you'd like. Structurally, whether the architecture was sound, the architecture had a flaw. The flaw was assuming that the stability of the arrangement was guaranteed by your compliance with it. You complied. The arrangement changed anyway. You thought your money was your protection. It was, until the people who made the rules decided it wasn't. Berezin saw it coming and fought it and lost everything faster and died badly. You didn't fight and lost more slowly and are sitting in a Belgravia house on a Tuesday in 2024 with $1.3 billion you can access and $3.8 billion you can't, and a name that gets read into parliamentary records by people who are not entirely wrong. Petrov, who sold the port facility at 40% of value in 2006, is also somewhere. You don't know where. You think about this occasionally. Not with guilt exactly, with the specific recognition that the structure you built required people like Petrov to be in it, that they were inputs, that you did not think of them as people when you were thinking in structures. Volkov would recognize this as a mathematical insight that arrived very late. Your mother is 83. She lives in Moscow in the apartment you bought her on Kutuzovsky Prospect in 1997. You call every Sunday. She doesn't ask about the money or the sanctions or the newspapers. She asks if you're eating. You say yes. She says good. The calls last 15 minutes. They're the most honest conversation you have all week. The morning is gray, London gray, specific, permanent, a color that has no name in Russian. You make tea, not coffee. You switched to tea 6 months ago and don't remember why. You open your laptop. 3 legal updates, 1 from the sanctions review team, 1 from the accountants in Cyprus, 1 from the lawyers handling the appeal on the Barcelona asset. You read all 3. You respond to none of them yet. You look out the window at the street. A woman walks a dog. A man carries groceries. The city moving without reference to you at all. You built an enormous structure. It required the Soviet Union to collapse, a vacuum to exist, a specific decade of chaos to be navigable, a specific set of relationships to be available, and a willingness to do things you do not describe carefully, even in your own memory. All of that was true at once. The structure stands, partially. The rest is in courts and frozen accounts and a marina in Barcelona. You finish your tea. You open the first legal update. You keep going because stopping was never in the structure. That was always the problem.